Abood Cohen. I'm excited to meet you. You're actually the first Samaritan I've ever met, and
Hey, my honor.
of course. And just to give the listener a bit of a background in case they're unfamiliar, uh, right after King Solomon, the kingdom of Israel was split into half, Judea and Samaria. The northern kingdom was called the kingdom of Shomron, Israel, and if I understand correctly, the modern Samaritans say that they are the descendants of the original inhabitants of the northern kingdom of Israel. And
Yeah.
despite the fact that Sanherib, the king of Assyria, exiled almost all of them, a portion remained. And so what we're looking at with the Samaritans may be one of the oldest, if not the oldest, group of Jews who remained in Israel.
Hmm. I think though, I mean, I'm not a historian or anything, but from what I've read so far and from what I've learned, not all of them were exiled, actually. Like Assyrians themselves, records of Assyrians themselves say 27,000.
Mhm.
So it was a really small number, right?
Really
Compared to the big population that used to be there.
interesting. So, I mean, this is going to be something we have to get into because I know that Samaritans only accept the five books of Moses, which I do too. So that's why I think we're going to have an interesting conversation because
Interesting, yeah.
I acknowledge the rest of the Old Testament probably more than you do. However,
Hmm.
for me, the five books of Moses is really the only thing we really need and stands head and shoulders above everything that comes after. But in my understanding, is the book of Joshua included in the books that you accept or not even?
We have the book of Joshua, but it's not actually the same as the Jewish version.
Wow.
It's completely different.
Can you
Not
like
like, for example, when you compare the Torahs, 99.9% of the Torah is almost the same, you know.
that's good.
But Joshua is totally different.
Can
What were
you
you about to ask?
can you give me some of the main examples of the differences of Joshua?
Wow. Mm,
Probably hard because it's a whole book, but if you
it
could
is. It is a whole book. But let's say that, it revolves more around Mount Gerizim, the building of the Mishkan on Mount Gerizim. Um, instead of waiting for the 400 years and then the Shiloh in the Jewish version where the Shiloh, they moved from. I mean, not moved, but the first Mishkan in the Jewish story was in Shiloh, right? In our case, Joshua built it the first year ever when the sons of Israel came here. And of course, one of the first rituals that they did was the reading of the blessings and the cursings, one on Mount Ebal, one on Mount Gerizim. So it really is just focused more on Mount Gerizim. The first, uh, you can say like establishment of the law of even also building the cities here. So if you compare it to the Book of Joshua in Judaism, you would see that there's going of first of all, it was Jericho, right? The walls of Jericho and so on and so on. So that was different. We don't have the entry to the walls of Jericho. It's a little bit different than that.
wow.
I'm hoping to make a separate episode maybe with you on that. I just
Okay, but that's I think the big sticking point between say Judaism and Samaritanism is this idea of the temple and where it's found. And from what you're explaining in the book of Joshua, being centered around establishing the Mishkan, the tabernacle on Mount Gerizim, which is where the Samaritans believe the tabernacle sanctuary should be,
Mhm.
versus in Judaism as you said, it was in Shiloh and then moved to Jerusalem. Um,
Yes.
now, that's such an interesting thing because it's almost like an alternative history, uh,
Mm.
right? And what, what's disturbing to me is that both sides have equal uh, political reason to do that. If anyone knows the
Mm.
history, right, there's literally a civil war and there's two kingdoms. So both kingdoms
True.
want to have God's temple, the place that God chooses in their
True.
territory. So if I could just ask you, what would be the real evidence, I guess, that you think the Samaritan tradition is superior?
Ooh, it's a big question. I think, every historian who's interested in this debate, this big question, any historian who's interested, in the history of the Israelites will ask this question. And I myself, ever since I got interested in learning about our history, this is the key, like, this is the most important question for me. And of course, I don't think there's a definite answer, 100%. And that's what's exciting about it, right? There's new things to search and research and learn about. But I will give you some. How do you say? What's the metaphor? I'll give you some like worms in the cans, like they say. So yeah. So first of all, one of my favorite evidence is the Hebrew that the Samaritans still use, right? So we can see that there's establishments of Samaritan Hebrew in really old, mezuzot, like the mezuzah, which is written on the tablet, written or etched actually on a tablet. Really old mezuzot. So that, first of all, establishes that they were here before the Assyrians even had this exile. We have the uh, the Dead Sea Scrolls, for example. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, first of all, the Dead Sea Scrolls were written in not in actually in Samaritan Hebrew or ancient Hebrew, but they were found in Assyrian, font in Hebrew, but Assyrian font, which is what the Jewish people use today. But whenever the word Yud Hey Vav Hey YHWH, the name of God, appears, it's actually written in Samaritan Hebrew, and that is most likely because the transition from Samaritan Hebrew to Assyrian Hebrew happened, or Assyrian font in Hebrew happened gradually. And because of that, it was not really accepted to switch immediately to, writing the word of God, the holiest, literally the holiest word in the Torah in Hebrew or in Assyrian.
Are you saying that Samaritans have a different Hebrew?
So yeah, we have our own Hebrew. I mean, it's just Hebrew. It's
Different
just
alphabet.
Hebrew,
It looks
but
different.
it's a different font, right? It's a different alphabet font, and it's most likely it is it's basically the most ancient version of Hebrew that we have. Of course, because 3,600 years have passed, like every language, it evolves, it developed. But if you look at it, you will see, and I'll send you pictures, or you can basically share on the video. You will see that it just looks ancient, and one of the few reasons why is because it's holographic. It's like, for example, letters look like what they are named after. For example, they are like, let's say the easiest example is the Ain. Ain looks. What does Ain mean in Hebrew? It means eye. And it makes all the sense to draw it like the eye, right? If you go to the Assyrian Hebrew, because of the transition and because of the change of font, it doesn't look like the eye.
Mm.
And other fast examples I can give you is the sheen. Sheen means teeth. Draw it like teeth. Kaf means palm. You draw a palm. And the alpha, aleph, alpha, ox, basically. So the head of the ox. Uh, Now, this is one important, I think, evidence, that the Samaritans still preserve the ancient Hebrew. Um, let's see, what else do we have?
Is that Hebrew? Alpha ox? Is that Hebrew?
From what I know, yes. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, that's what I've learned.
How,
Beat means house,
yeah,
right?
that I
So
know. Yeah, but so is that equivalent to like the Paleo Hebrew that they talk about? Like the
yes,
yeah.
yes. Now, if you search up, Paleo Hebrew literally means ancient Hebrew, but in Greek.
Right.
But if you search for Paleo Hebrew and then compare it to the Samaritan Hebrew today, you will see the similarities. But we're talking particularly about Samaritan Hebrew, which is what developed by the Samaritan community across the years.
Here's my question.
Uh,
Do you guys have an active Mishkan, active tabernacle right now on Mount Gerizim?
no, in
Why
the
not?
story of the Samaritans, we used to have, but it was in our tradition. It is believed that God basically hid it, made he sent a prophet that really isn't like a isn't he he's not considered someone who was sent, but like really someone who was like basically given a mission to hide the Mishkan, hide the tabernacle, and
Is
the reason is simply because the tribes were not aligned anymore. They were not really worthy of the Mishkan. And of course, the Choshen, that what the high priest used to wear, the whole 12 stones were not really aligned and they were not really lighting. So basically, in our prayers, and for example, in about a week from now, we'll have Yom Kippur. And by the end of Yom Kippur, we have this really incredibly strong prayer where we kind of mourn the loss of the Mishkan. It was that important.
okay.
So
So, question: Who's your prophet that you were talking about?
the prophet who hid the Mishkan, he's I don't think that we have even a name for him. It's just the tradition that he's a prophet. It's not. It's just the reason is to not to glorify him. He was just sent to hide it. I will just have to confirm for you on that. But in our tradition, when we sit with our elders and they tell us the stories and that they learned from their ancestors, they just say prophet. That she's just sent a prophet. But I will get back to you on that. It's an interesting question.
So
I think one,
let me ask you a
yeah.
question about the priesthood. Do you guys have like I see your name's Cohen? I don't know. Do you guys have a
Mm.
reserved priesthood? Do you believe or no?
Yes, we do. And interestingly, DNA evidence also support that. Now, I'm not a genetics expert, but you can definitely, or the audience, they can search, online and they can see how Samaritans have preserved the Cohen gene, basically. If I'm not mistaken, it's not J1, something like E1, B1. But anyway, search that up. You will see that Samaritans have preserved the Kohen. There's some connection between the Jewish Kohens and the Samaritan Kohens. And interestingly, you have to remember that as Samaritans, we believe that we're not the only Levites. We're the half of the Levites who stayed in the north, and we believe that there's another half that stayed in the south, and that's where the Jewish people are from. But that's you, as you mentioned, that this is one evidence actually of Samaritans being, Israelites. As we're talking about evidence, this is one huge pillar of evidence. Now, I did a DNA test as myself to just, out of curiosity, to know about my ancestors, but also, whatever, to know if I'm, prone to any diseases or illnesses or whatever. Thankfully, I'm good. But what was really interesting was that I have like 95% Levant, basically. So if you look at the map of where my ancestors have been, they never left the Holy Land, 0, percent of from them have came from Europe or America or Asia, so which means that they stay in the land here at least for 4,000 years.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. And
And it's the highest percentage of Levant, by the way. Samaritans have the highest percentage of the Levant,
right, and but there's the Levites and then there's the Kohanim, right?
Yes. So back to that. So basically, what's left from the Samaritan population today, we're 850. When you actually 3,000 years ago, we used to be close to, you know, uh, historians say 500,000, 600,000. Some people say a million.
What
Uh,
caused that to happen?
what happened is basically, first of all, the exiles that happened to the Jewish people were because of the Romans, the Babylonians, and so on, such on. Now, the Romans did not control the north as much as the south. The Byzantines were actually the ones who controlled the north to a lot of time, and also there were the Assyrians, of course, and they were in the Islamic period, there were the Abbasim and such on and such on. So these people, these nations were not really nice to us, let's just say, especially the Byzantines. So Samaritans revolted against the Byzantines 3 times, led by our famous leader Baba the Great. He's a huge figure in the Samaritan community. And the 2 first revolts were very successful. The third one was I believe the Romans helped the Byzantines, and they wiped out like almost 1/3 of the population. and then other things have came, either forced conversions to other religions or whatever. So 100 years ago, there was only 150 Samaritans left in the world. And whenever I say sometimes to people who come to learn about Samaritans, 150, they think, oh, 150 families or 150,000. That's not so bad. It's like, no, 150 people. But today we're 850. So in 100 years, we increased. And what we believe have remained from us, we believe, are from tribes of Levi and the two sons of Joseph. So Ephraim and Menashe, basically. So since my last name is Cohen, I am from the Levi tribe,
Right.
and my grandfather is the high priest, basically. So
And what about, so not just Levi, but Aaron in particular?
okay, so the priesthood right now, the high priesthood, we do not believe is exactly direct from Aaron. It is definitely related, as we believe, 100% we believe that. But the line from Aaron, basically, who came after Aaron? Elazar, his son, and then after Elazar, Pinchas, and then after Pinchas, Abisha, and so on and so on, until a specific line, because of the wars, because of the exiles, whatever that happened, this lineage really died out. So there had to be the Cohens who are around this time. They had to take a decision. We still need a high priest because in our tradition, the high priesthood actually never stopped even after the Mishkan was destroyed. There was still a high priest because of this. Basically, they need someone to ask questions. They need someone to lead them in the prayer and whatever. So we moved the transition of the high priest from being son to son to being the oldest in the Cohen family. Mm-hmm. So the question is, so how do you become a high priest? Three things. You have to be in the Cohen family, you have to be the oldest of the Cohen family, and then you have to be living on Mount Gerizim, which is our holiest mountain, much as holy as Jerusalem. Mm-hmm.
So does your Torah say that it needs to be the descendants of Aaron?
The high priest? Yeah. So, I mean,
really,
what we know,
not only the high priest, so the high priest and all of the priests in general who are servicing, there's the Levites and then there's the Kohanim, who are the priests in the temple. They need to be the descendants of Aaron.
So the Kohanim today do not need to be directly descendants of Aaron. They just need to be from the tribe of Levi. That's what we call. So we don't use the word priest as unless the person is really serving as a chazan, a cantor, or basically the older generation. So when you're like 50, maybe 60 years old, 50, 60 years old, something like that, you start wearing a more respectful thing in our Shabbat. Like, for example, we have a specific I don't know if I want to call it hat. In Hebrew, it's called misnefet. And we still have that tradition where only the Levites are allowed to wear the misnefet.
It's like a turban?
Yeah, you can say that, yeah.
But here's the question. Because so much of this is blood related, as in you are the descendants and that, do you accept converts or how does that work?
We accept converts, but it's not as easy as it sounds. For example, the most accepting, how can I describe this? The easiest way for people to convert is by Samaritans who marry from outside the community. When a Samaritan man marries a non-Samaritan woman, the conversion process is easier. And that is because, first of all, he takes her in the family and then teaches her, every day for 6, 7, 8 months if needed, and even more if needed, and then he will see, is she going to live with this? And if she's basically serious about this, right? And then if everything is okay, then he marries her, and in the marriage ceremony, this is the conversion process. Now, if a man wants to convert to become a Samaritan, now we have thousands of people who are interested in the Samaritan religion, who have Samaritan. For example, I have some documentaries on YouTube And a lot of people, reached up and said, hey, I watched your documentary. By the way, I did a DNA test and I have like 2% Samaritan. They're interested to learn more about the Samaritan community. But there's other people who are around the world who believe that the Samaritan religion is the correct version of the Israelite religion and they want to practice it. The problem is, now it's not a problem, but there's a challenge here, and that is, first of all, we really respect those people. We love them from all over the world, and we understand their love for the Samaritan tradition. But being a Samaritan also means you have to be in the community here. So if you're coming in the community every day, even that, until now, no one did this. You have to be here for about 6, 7, 8 months, even a year, even 2 years, and then only then, if the Samaritan community sees that you're serious, this is when you come to every prayer of Shabbat and everything. This is when you're really accepted in the community as a convert. But until now, it just didn't happen.
They
Not to
have to
say that
live.
the people around the world are not accepted as Samaritans, but
You're saying they
but
have to live,
still,
have to live amongst the community and
most likely they have to live or live close. Now, until now, again, some people have tried, and they're really nice people, friends of mine even. But the community is not very easy. We're not really missionaries who want to convert people. It's just a different thing. Anyone who wants to learn about the Samaritan tradition is more than welcome. But when they come in the community, and if they want to eat from the Passover meat, and if they want to, I don't know, get into the synagogue really close to the Chazan or whatever, they have the community part to also convert to. You can convert as a Samaritan, but also converting in the community is a whole different thing.
so let me
So this is why I'm telling you there's 850 Samaritans around the world, but realistically, there's even more than 15, 20,000 followers of the Samaritan religion around the world.
You just
So,
mentioned the Passover meat, and I'm curious because it says in Deuteronomy 16 that you can only eat the Passover meat in the place that God chooses. So does that mean you guys all go to Mount Gerizim to eat the Passover offering?
correct, yes. So, it's written in the Torah, particularly, right? I think in the second book, Exodus, we call it the second book, by the way. So,
Hmm.
it's written that you have to eat it in the chosen place. Now, in the Jewish version, it is the place that God will choose. So that's one difference. And yes, until today, we do the Passover ceremony, which is the only basically sacrifice that we make. Of course, there's of course people who might do like a Thanksgiving of some sort. If they did if they promised God, if this happens, I will, give free meat to the community. If that is a sacrifice, we still do it, but we don't do the daily sacrifices of the Mishkan anymore. So,
Hmm. So
but again, it has to be on Mount Gerizim. Yes.
yeah, that's Deuteronomy 16 says you must eat it in the place that God chooses. Uh,
Hmm.
okay. I mean, why can't you rebuild the Mishkan?
So you have to remember why was it removed in the first place. Of course, if you look about, if you go to archaeological, understandings and historians, and
The
uh,
Torah,
basically what the archaeologists say about the Mishkan, they would say that it was destroyed.
but the Torah gives instructions on how to build it.
100%. But because of the Samaritan tradition saying that we have lost the Mishkan because of sin and because of the not like the misalignment of the tribes, then we don't have the alignment anymore, And for the alignment of the tribes to be with the Torah 100% and everything, for that to happen, we are waiting for a ta'ib, what we call him ta'ib, which is kind of like saying the Mashiach, or the equivalent of the Mashiach, right? The Messiah, if you want to say it in English. Now, we don't call him Messiah, we just call him ta'ib. We believe he will come at at the right time, at a specific time in history, where he will restore the belief on Mount Gerizim and then reunite the tribes, and then Only then the high priest will be able to put the choshen on to build it, rebuild it, and then all the jewels, or not the jewels, but the stones will be lighting up, and then only at that time the Mishkan will be built again, and the high priest could even dare to go behind the holy of holies, like it is said,
Well,
because if he goes. Mhm.
I'm hearing a lot of tradition, and I'm just curious because if in your belief, which is my belief, that the Torah is the only thing we have to follow, then why is there so much emphasis on tradition to the point of actually withholding us from rebuilding the Mishkan, for example?
Listen, we're 100% with you on that. As Samaritans, we only have the first five books. But even that, there's things where the Torah also told us, what did God give to Moses on Mount Sinai?
I mean,
It mentions, right? It mentions specific things. It mentions that God gave Moses the Torah, but not only the Torah, it also gave him the mitzvah, which is the commandments, and not the Ten Commandments. It just specifically said the mitzvah, just the commandments. Now, what is the mitzvah? A mitzvah is what he taught him other than the Torah, we believe. And that also goes.
and the mitzvah in the Torah, there's lots of mitzvot in the Torah, right?
Correct, correct. But there's also the question of how you practice them. If there's no specific instructions. Like, for example, we know Shmor the Shabbat, but as time passes by, who will tell you how will you keep Shabbat? Like, we have electricity now, we have heaters, we have coolers. Someone in the community have to decide, are those allowed or not? And the answer actually lies in the Torah.
How do you interpret the electricity?
So we interpret electricity as a kind of fire, but it's a little bit lower, how do you say, it's a bit lower, I don't know the right word, maybe higher acceptance than fire, let's say. And what I mean by this is we can leave a small light on Shabbat on, like a really small light on, to see the way, because turning on the light realistically doesn't need a lot of effort, and that's exactly what Shabbat is for. It's just low effort, really low effort things. Although waking up at 3 a.m. for the Shabbat prayer is a little bit, does take effort. But in reality, we have Shabbat, and we have some people who came to the high priest at some point and asked him, hey, it's becoming really hot in the prayer, and we want permission, to turn on the air conditioning. Now, the people in Tel Aviv, like, we are basically divided between Mount Gerizim and Tel Aviv and Cholon, basically. Now, the Samaritans in Tel Aviv, Cholon, they have much, warmer weather over there, especially in summer. It gets really hot, and they have the reasonable permission to turn on air conditioning. Of course, if it's by using the automatic, clock where it turns it on, or if you have a Goy Shabbat, a person who is not a Samaritan who can use it. But why did I mention Shabbat? Is because, at this point you have to wonder. So there's going to be other things. Maybe there's in the future. Who knows? You're going to have robots, right? Let's hypothesize for a moment. If you have a robot for Shabbat who, on Shabbat, you have to know, should I turn him off? Should I turn him on? Who will ask? Who will tell you? Is it going to be your own decision? In our case, it's really easy. The Torah tells you very clearly that you have to go to the Levites on that time, in that time, from that moment, from the place, from the chosen place, and they will tell you what to do. This is a verse in the Torah. It's really in Deuteronomy, right? And we do that. The Levites, and today traditionally it's not only the Kohanim. It's actually also with the the wise people of the community, the Zkanim, the older people. They will tell you as well. And the Torah says, "Ask your father, and he will tell you."
Do you interpret the do not burn a fire as, because there's an argument between the Karaites and the Orthodox, do not burn a fire. Can you have it burning before Shabbat and then let it automatically go? Or can you have
Fire. Fire particularly, we don't do at all,
But you can't
especially because of electricity. So
do it before
say
Shabbat.
again?
Even if the fire is lit before Shabbat, you put it out before Shabbat.
Yes. If
Huh.
it's fire, we have to turn it off before Shabbat. No accepting of fire at all. But when it comes to hot things, the only hot things we have on Shabbat is water, basically, and for tea, to make tea or coffee or whatever. But
How,
when it comes to heating food, we don't heat food.
how do you heat
So
it? Electricity?
water is just we keep it by thermos. You bottles like thermoses, basically. You
Or
just
you
store
don't heat
the
it with fire or anything, you keep it in a thermos.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Basically, before Shabbat begins, you heat it, and then you just keep it in the thermos, and it's good for 24 hours, sometimes less, but it's enough to give you a good time. So before prayer and everything.
Cool. And you said that there is Yom Kippur in 10 days. So that means you have a bit of a different calendar, close but different.
Yeah, it's not exactly 10 days. It's on Sunday we have the Rosh Hashanah. We don't call it Rosh Hashanah, just we call it the first
Yeah.
the seventh month, really,
Well, the Torah
the
calls it
first day of the
that.
seventh.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yom Teruah.
Chodesh Hashvi. Sorry.
Yom Teruah.
Exactly.
How do you practice that?
It's just a prayer. It's just a prayer of about 2 hours and then 24 hours of Shabbat, basically, Yom Teruah. So it's a 24-hour Shabbat. And there's a morning prayer of about 6 hours, 7 hours. And and then there's also the one of my favorite parts of it is when the families of the non Cohen families basically go to the Cohen families, and they will say they will congratulate them. They will tell them Chag Sameach, a happy holiday. And they will have like incredibly beautiful, tables of food and sweets and arak, and it's a celebration. It's a beautiful celebration because the Torah commands you to be happy. Like shame. So we do that basically.
Yeah, just to be clear, it does not say Vayita Sameach on Yom Teruah. It says that on Sukkot. But it doesn't say not to.
Particularly, I mean, it's close to Sukkot,
Yeah, it says to
but
afflict
yeah,
yourself on Yom Kippur. Do you blow
right.
the Teruah? Do you blow?
We don't anymore. We only do it on Shabbat. On Yom Kippur these days to announce the beginning of Yom Kippur and the ending of Yom Kippur. So
Yeah, but that's not in the Torah.
it's not, but because we don't have the Mishkan anymore, we
How do
don't have the
you
Chatzitzarot, right? So
interpret that?
how do we interpret the Yom Teruah? So,
As
well,
in,
it's
Teruah
only
is through a blast.
so the word Teruah is a blast, but again, because we don't have the Mishkan, the interpretation and the tradition, and also you have to remember that we lived on, with as a minority for so long now that it's just not it doesn't make sense for you to do the tiruah and make all the city come to you because you're a minority for hundreds of years. Now if we do it, of course it's more accepted. We have very peaceful neighbors, whether they're the Palestinians or the Israelis. We have very peaceful neighbors, but the tradition didn't come back yet. It might be soon, hopefully. But the only we do read the verses that say it to commemorate it and to never forget it. We read every single verse that commands us to do anything for the day that we will do it.
You think it's more dependent on the Chatzotzrot, the trumpet, so you have to wait till that's restored.
Sorry, do we?
You're saying that the blast is dependent on the Chatzotzrot, on the trumpets, so you want to wait till that's restored, till you blow the blast on Yom Teruah.
Yes, yeah. Basically, when this tradition comes back, we will get it back as well. There's other things that we're waiting for the Mishkan to do, so to come back, so we can
Yeah.
continue. But what secures us and what makes us not forget it are those prayers, those 6 hours prayers. So
Did you say that you're at peace with your Palestinian neighbors?
yeah.
Would you say that's something unique to the Samaritan community?
I don't think it's only unique for the Samaritan community. Maybe it's particularly unique, but it's not the only one. And but there's a reason why, and that is because this as Samaritans, when we used to be 100, and even before that, when we used to be thousands, Samaritans really never left Nablus,
Mm.
Shechem, and the reason is because it's literally part of Mount Gerizim. Actually, Shechem means shoulder. It's the shoulder of Mount Gerizim, and because of that, first of all, we speak perfect Arabic. We have our own dialect, but it's almost 100% same as the Nablusian accent, the Palestinian accent. So that's one. And two, because of those hundreds of years that we lived among them, we just have friends from them.
Mm. Yeah.
I'm not saying that it was 100%. Like there might be a few stories here and there of some families not liking the Samaritans, but actually other some Palestinian families, protected us from those people, and.
Mhm.
So yeah,
That's good. That's nice. And yeah, Shechem was given to Joseph, right? So that's why you see
yes,
descendants of
yes,
Joseph.
Ephraim and Manasseh, yes, particularly Ephraim, we say, yeah.
So I want to just ask you about the calendar real quick because we have the Jews have Rosh Hashanah, which is obviously ridiculous. It's not Rosh Hashanah. It's Yom Zikaron, Zichron Teruah, the remembrance of the blast. That is falling out at the end of September, September 23rd, and then Yom Kippur is October 1st, October
Hmm.
2nd. Um, so that's for you guys, it's a little earlier. Is that, or are we on the same calendar?
We have Yom Kippur on the 1st of October.
So you're a day before the Jewish one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what calendar do you use
I
the
mean, sometimes it's different. What calendar we use, it's a little bit complicated. We have something called the Holy Calculation, HaCheshbon HaKadosh, Ishban Kashta in ancient Hebrew, and it's really a mix of calculations that we've inherited. We believe even since Adam, the tradition says that, and only the Kohanim are allowed to learn it, and it's actually very accurate, seasonally very accurate, and uh, it's basically also you have to do the calculation based on the sky, patterns, but you have to do it from Mount Gerizim for it to work. That's how the tradition works. I actually learned the first few parts of it, and I had to swear on the Torah not to bring the knowledge outside,
it's
and I still have to learn. However, sorry,
a secret.
it is a secret, but the secret have been given to an AI. And that is because I mean, not particular in AI, it's an algorithm. That's because there's a really smart Samaritan who could implement this basically belief in the sorry, not belief, but the tradition in the Excel sheet. So he was smart enough to do it. Of course, with the acceptance. But what happened is that he could calculate hundreds of years in advance. Like for example, when will Yom Kippur be? When will Rosh Hashanah be? Something like that.
Well, it's unfortunate that you would give AI such important secrets, but
Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly. I know it's an offline algorithm, but it's.
well, okay. I mean, it seems to be somewhat aligned with the Jewish calendar, though, like with the seasons and stuff like that. So,
Correct. It is someone alike. The difference would be almost like between sometimes the same day, sometimes the day before, sometimes a week before, sometimes a week after. But I mean, the longest would be 2, 3 weeks difference. So
yeah, that's good. We're not so off, us,
true,
us Jews. Well,
true.
I find this to be interesting because I think there's a deeper philosophical battle here, or like a claim for history, as in the Jewish tradition of history, first of all, frames the Samaria as being way more evil than Judea, right?
Hmm.
And
You have to
ultimately,
wonder why.
yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of political motivation, and not to be offensive, but in both ways,
Of course, no. It's just
but I think it's interesting that the narrative of the Tanakh and the Jewish scriptures places extreme power in Judea, giving it to
hmm
Solomon, right? The kingdom of Judah being considered. the ultimate kingdom, to the point that Jews nowadays, they call themselves Jews, right? And they claim that everyone who traces themselves back to being an Israelite is really a Jew, which I find to be ridiculous. They claim the tribes of Israel are lost and they don't exist, which they have no evidence for. And
Mm.
I find that to be offensive because you really believe that all of the northern Israel just
There's
disappeared.
an interesting, not to cut you off, but there's an interesting research on those on this particular claim that has been released just recently. I don't know how you can find it, but it's about the 10 lost tribes. A professor who, you know, re-questions this matter
Yeah.
of like, is this claim really true of about being there, like the 10 lost tribes being lost? And I think part of it is because, and again, this is no not to demean any of our Jewish brothers, you know, with their with the belief, but again, it's just questions that like, is it because of the conflict that used to be between the Jewish people and the Samaritans back then? You know, it was just convenient, you know, to you know, basically make the Samaritans not look Israelites, you know, and really make them not become from the not be really from the tribes originally, right? So you know, there's also this thing that they have about the Samaritans, especially in the Orthodox world. It is believed that Samaritans are Kutim that came from Kuta, from Iraq, particularly
I heard that.
from yeah.
Yeah, and then
And the
maybe
Assyrians basically repopulated the land, so they used the Samaritans. Well, back then were called Kutim from Kuta from Iraq, but yeah,
yeah, well, I mean that's the thing is people spare no efforts to demonize their opponent. And I think it's an interesting situation here because, the Northern Kingdom is kind of lost in history when the Jews come and just completely take over the narrative, the history, the land.
correct.
But I find it interesting to know like what actually was going on in Israel. And obviously, you even have Elijah, the prophet, is from Israel, right? From the
The
north.
North.
Um, but I mean, this whole temple debacle is really serious, especially for Jews, because so much of the worship is centered around the place that God chooses. And I imagine, in your view, you don't accept David's appeal to God to build a temple in Jerusalem. First of all,
Well, Solomon was the one who built it, right?
Solomon built it, but in the narrative of the Old Testament, David's the one who asks for it to be built.
Okay.
He asks, it's like,
Because in our tradition, like, you know, I mean, the what's said in the stories is that David was had a dream that he was on Mount Gerizim, and God told him, David, I'm the Lord your God. This is Mount Gerizim, and this is the place of worship. Like, but I'm just you know, paraphrasing.
this is
But he didn't build because of that he didn't build the Mishkan, but then his son did.
so. In your view, I mean, because David was king over all of Israel, right?
Correct.
In your view, David was still in alignment with your tradition.
Yeah, he's you know, he is considered a king, you know, in the Samaritan tradition. But it is believed that Solomon was the one who really put the nail in the coffin when it came to the temple. But basically, remember, we as Samaritans we don't have a temple. We never had a temple.
Interesting.
But what is the temple? A temple had the tabernacle inside it to make the tabernacle a permanent place. You know, if you have a temple and they put the tabernacle in it, then you kind of make it permanent. In our case, the temple equivalent is the mountain itself, Mount Gerizim, where on top was the tabernacle.
Mhm.
So that's
Well, it
the thing.
makes sense unless you have an open prophecy, which is the narrative again of the Tanakh, where God tells David, "You may change it from a tabernacle to a temple, from
Hmm.
so Shiloh to
To
Jerusalem."
Jerusalem, yeah.
With the Torah, you actually have to build a tabernacle, and there's specific instructions. The beams with the it's a temporary structure. It's not like a actual building.
It can be folded and stuff. Yes,
Yeah, which is seemingly intentional. I mean, obviously, when they're in the desert, that's intentional. But if you don't accept
yes.
this prophetic tradition from David to Solomon, claiming that the temple should be moved into a building on Mount Zion, then it actually seems sacrilegious, right? Like against what God wants. And so, in your view, and there's evidence to support this that Solomon really fell off the wagon. I mean, even the Tanakh says he worshipped other gods and caused the civil war and the split of the kingdom. So, in your view, another problem of his is that he built the temple in Jerusalem.
Yes, correct. Particularly the split did happen after his son Rehoboam, and of course Jeroboam had the actual problems, and when Jeroboam and when Rehoboam basically told the north that my father treated you with sticks, I will treat you with scorpions. It's kind of like a threat. That particularly caused the split, but it can also give you a hint of how much tension was between the two kingdoms. Uh, and you're correct when you mentioned a few minutes ago that we have less history recorded from the north rather from the south. And unfortunately, it just makes sense now that we're just only 800 people. Like, where we're going to go with all the history. It's just we do have a lot recorded, but not as much as the South. However, what's interesting is that every year and maybe every month we have new findings of just the last 2 weeks. Maybe you saw the Samaritan synagogue that has been found. Not sorry, it's not a synagogue; it's an estate. So basically, it's an estate, a Samaritan estate, 1,400-year-old estate. Samaritan really lived there back when the Samaritan population was nourishing. Back when there was um, like basically tens of thousands of Samaritans. But that's only makes it more exciting. There's a lot of new things to be found. So
Yeah. And I mean, do you buy the narrative of Yerovam? Because it says in the Tanakh that Yerovam, when he first became king, he didn't want people to go to the temple in Jerusalem, so he built two golden calves in
Mhm.
Samaria and told all the people, "Come worship at the golden
So
calf."
the Samaritans go on the top of mountains to worship them. We don't. I mean, there's some of it is true that Samaritans did, deviate from the right path,
Yeah.
but we don't have. First of all, you have to take into account like any story in the books of prophets and writings. We do respect, and some of it we take as history because again, we don't know some parts of what happened, but there are some parts that are kind of like demeaning and naturally as Samaritans, I mean, demeaning for Samaritans, and naturally we will not accept them because of even though we have some history of we just acknowledge that Samaritans did go through a period where they were not aligned with God's word, but there are some stories that we don't really have agreement on, and it's just because they were just not recorded in our books. But then again, I'm telling you that there's many books that we have lost and many history that we have, even it's known that in 1920, 1930, in the First World War, Samaritans have sold hundreds, maybe even thousands of their books, to basically to continue living because of the poverty that was happening. So you can only imagine how much maybe history was written there, maybe books. Because until now, we have Samaritans who've kept books that are about, hundreds of years old, 600, 700 years old. My family like the Cohen family has a Torah of about 750 years old that we keep rotating between each Cohen family, such on.
And that
So one of
Torah is identical. It's the same Torah, and the only difference is it says the place that God has already chosen, and then
I
reference.
mean, that's not the only difference. That's the most important difference. Like let's say if you want to compare the two Torahs, like if you let's say you tomorrow you wake up and then you want to see the difference, you want to study all the differences, but you want to go word for word. You open both Torahs, you put the Samaritan Torah and then you put the Jewish Torah, and you start. The first difference, like let's say you search for letter by letter, aleph aleph, beat beat. The first difference you will see is the word and, ve, in Hebrew, the vav word, which is basically comes when God says that ve'etz pri oseh pri, when and a tree of fruit that makes another fruit of its kind, and is not mentioned in the Jewish Torah. But that's a very boring difference. What's interesting, I think, for me, is and there's a verse that says, "And God finished His work on the seventh day." In the Jewish tradition, as Jewish Torah, Masoretic text, And then he rested on the seventh day. Makes a lot of sense, right? Because he created Adam on the sixth day, and then he rested on the seventh day. In our case, in the Samaritan traditions, Samaritan Torah, and God finished his work, after he created Adam, of course, on the sixth day, he also finished his work on the sixth day. So when he finished creating Adam and doing everything, and created Eve, he was like, okay, I'm done. This is it. And then the sun sets, and then the Shabbat begins. You see? So in our case, God finishes his work on the sixth day. So that's one difference. Sixth in the Samaritan Torah, seventh in the Samaritan Torah. Now, what's even more interesting when it comes to the Ten Commandments?
So it says that
Sorry?
he finished the work on the sixth day. Isn't in the Masoretic text, the Jewish text, it says Vayichal Elohim bayom hashvi'i.
Hashvi'i malchuto asher asa ve'ishbat bayom hashvi'i. Yes.
Seventh day, and in your text it says God finished on the sixth day.
Exactly.
Makes
Yes.
sense, right? Because if he
It does make sense.
that means he was maybe still working a little on the seventh day, but
Yeah. But then again, it just you have to wonder why those differences happened, right? Like, what's the intention? I asked my uncle, who's a scholar. Sorry.
I just wanted to remind you, you were going to say some difference about the Ten Commandments too.
True.
But
Although, but it's just one small thing about it is that you have to wonder why those differences happened. It makes you wonder, like, is it because of back then there was not many, copies of the Torahs, or there was not, they're stored, or the guy who basically wrote the Torah in Assyrian Hebrew or Samaritan Hebrew. I'm not going to be biased or anything like that, but maybe he did it by heart, forgot a word there, forgot a letter there. We'll talk more about that. But coming back to the most important difference between the Samaritan Torah and the Jewish Torah, like, if you want to remember anything from this conversation about the differences between Samaritans and Jews, it's this, and that is that we have a commandment in the 10th commandments, which is number 10, like, as we count it as not the 10th commandment, that is not found in the Jewish Torah or in the Jewish 10 commandments, or the 10 sayings. Like, some people say 10 commandments. In Hebrew, it's Aseret HaDevarim, so it's the 10. I don't know how you say devarim in English, like sayings or whatever. Which is building an altar on Mount Gerizim. Basically, it's a huge verse that goes along like this. It says, "Yakibi yakshema elu akal ares esor." Yakibi yakshema elu akal ares esor. Basically, "V'yeh sheyivecha Adonai Elohecha," when God, and it shall be that when God brings you to the land that he has prepared for you, that he promised you, and you shall build those stones which I have commanded you today. Bar Gerizim, on Mount Gerizim. Now this is like basically the confirmation of the choosing of the place. So this is when God chose the place, basically, in our tradition, that when he mentioned it in the Ten Commandments. Now here's where it gets more interesting. We have verses after the Ten Commandments in the Jewish Torah and in the Samaritan Torah that mentions the chosen place. I mean, in our version, it's chosen. In the Jewish version, is that it will be chosen. And we have about 20 verses like this, exactly after the Ten Commandments. Chosen in the Jewish Torah, in the Samaritan Torah, chosen in the Ten Commandments, basically, and before. And by the way, you have to remember that the place wasn't particularly chosen only in the Ten Commandments. It was chosen even at the time of Abraham. Because Abraham, where did he sacrifice his son, almost sacrifice his son Isaac? It was in a place called Ve'Elohim Yireh. God told him, go to one of the mountains that I will show you. And then we have Jacob. He woke up from the dream of when he slept on one of the rocks in Kiryat Luza, he says, and the Torah says. And then he woke up from the dream and he says, wow. He saw the dream where the ladders come up and down. He said, wow, this must be the gates of heaven and the house of God. What is this place? What is about this place that is so important that Jacob calls it the house of God? That's a huge claim, right? So this must be the chosen place if it's the house of God. And then we have other, other things, but particularly, it's
Well,
not about really.
sorry,
It might be semantics, but
Mount Gerizim in Luz.
I mean, Luza is one of the names of Mount Gerizim because the Torah mentions that Jacob goes to Luza.
Yeah, it says it was called Luz previously and then Bethel.
Correct.
So that's
Correct.
where Mount Gerizim is?
Yes, that's one of the names of Mount Gerizim, one of the 12 names,
Hmm.
basically, which all point to the same. And the word Gerizim in our tradition actually means commandments. So the mountain of commandments. I think one more point I want to talk about when you talk about the chosen and will choose, is that some people would say that in the tradition, even in the Jewish Torah, when God says that to the place that God will choose, which is in Hebrew Yivchar with the Yud, some people would also say that it also means chose. Because there's other verses in the Torah, for example, as Yashar, Moshe, Ubnei Israel, and the Song of the Sea. The word Yashar is essentially, now, singing now, but actually it's in the past, right? So it's about semantics at some degree, but not exactly, So it's a huge world. So
Yeah, I mean it's literally again, as I said, alternative history. Playing
yes,
here. And I don't have much of a dog in the fight just because even by your own tradition, you don't even have the Mishkan, and it's not like you don't believe that we're in alignment at this moment to even have unity around these things. So that's why I pray that God does clarify what the place is so that we all know
amen.
we have so much disagreement. But I do find it fascinating that you do have this tight-knit community of people who are
Yes,
descendants of a very ancient Israelite tribe.
true.
And
And by the way, not to cut you off, but like since we're talking about the tabernacle, the Samaritan tabernacle, Samaritan Mishkan is almost 100% proven archaeologically that we did have a Mishkan because of the many archaeological evidence. You can search that up, whether it's the items that have been found of the gold or silver, and particularly the animal bones that have been found that are all kosher animals. By the way, we're not talking about non-kosher animals. But if you compare it to the other temples or anything, there's really much less evidence. I'm not saying that there is no evidence, but that just makes it more interesting. So
you believe that the tabernacle was ever in Shiloh, or you just believe it was straight away on Mount Gerizim?
I mean, we do believe that first of all, the split happened long before Rehoboam and Jeroboam. The spark happened long before, and that is because Eli, one of the high priests, had this disagreement with Uzi, which is basically what we believe the correct dynasty, that Uzi was the correct person to be the high priest, as we believe. Eli came up to him and he was like, why should you be the high priest? I'm also a Cohen. Now, he in our tradition he had the charisma to make a following. If you're a good speaker, you can convince people to go be and follow you and believe in what you're saying. Now, he didn't only have charisma, but he also had power and money. And in our tradition, it says that he made a group of people go away from Mount Gerizim. Where? To Shiloh. And that happened after 450 years only, after the sons of Israel came. When does the Jewish people say is the first time the tabernacle has been built? Also 450 years only after the Israelites' entry to the land. Only so there was 400 years. Where was the Mishkan in those first 400 years? You have to wonder, right? Again, I'm not trying to claim anything. We're right, we're wrong. We're just saying what our tradition says, right? That's what people are interested in. But you have to ask those questions. And 400 years of non-Mishkan, then why, right?
You're
How
explaining
would people practice those mitzvot, right, in the Torah if there was
the
no
gap
Mishkan at first?
there. You're saying there's 450 years. So it doesn't say that the Mishkan was built immediately in Shiloh.
In our tradition, it doesn't say that. No, It was 450 years. You're asking about our tradition or the Jewish story?
Jewish tradition. I'm trying to recall if
As I know, it's Eli
it,
only came after
is
400 years.
later.
So that's the thing.
So you're saying that the rival tabernacle was built by Eli, who was this other high priest that wanted to make his own temple. Yeah,
Yes.
that's fascinating. I want to ask you just maybe rapid fire, like
Okay.
some traditions. Do you guys still maintain them, or how do you do it? So you mentioned mezuzah, which is the writings on the doorposts, right?
Yes.
Do you have mezuzahs?
We do. We do. I'll send you some photos of them. They look like basically tablets, huge stone tablets that have Samaritan ancient Hebrew etched on them, and usually it's different verses, particularly the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Most of the time, but for example, my house, I have one of my close relatives who basically volunteered to make one for me, and he chose the verses for me. He chose the Cohen blessings, and he chose the time where the death angel went to the Egyptian houses, but then the God protected the ones where they had blood on them.
So you don't
This
have
kind of
believe
thing.
it has to be those specific verses.
No, it just says Vayuha devarim ele, right? And what is the devarim? It's just really particularly anything in the Torah.
Broadly speaking, it's the Torah for sure. But the
Correct.
key practice is to do those specific words, as a solution.
It's yeah, yeah. I mean, most of the time we do have these verses from the Shema.
Without
So tefillin we don't have, and particularly because the interpretation of this verse is just not literal. We have many examples in the Torah where it's impossible to actually do what the Torah says. For example, it says "V'maltem et ha'arelat levavchem," that you shall, chain your heart, or something like that. How can you do that?
Sure, yeah, sure. You can't do
Say
that.
again.
You can't circumcise your heart without killing yourself.
You cannot exactly. Now imagine doing that literally. You cannot, right? So what we have is that what the Shema says, that you shall have that you have to have, you wrap your hands or something. What we have, that is that it just says that remember God whenever you are about to do something specific. Now it can be a good idea also to put tefillin. We're just not saying it's not allowed. It can be a good reminder. But I'm not. But we don't believe that it is a particular commandment. And the same goes for the
Yeah,
totafot.
and the ornament between your eyes. What strikes me as it being literal is that it's said in the same breath in Deuteronomy chapter 6. It's in the same breath as mezuzah, right? So it says, tie these words as a sign upon your hand, an ornament between your eyes, and put them upon the doorposts of your house, right? So the fact that
Right.
it's said in the same breath like that does imply to me that there is a literal nature to it.
Correct. But then again, I mean, there's many times where the Torah is not literal. Like I said, like for example, when God was about to when He created the flood, right after He created after the flood finished, the Torah says Ve'omer Adonai al levo, like, and God said to His heart. So we can see that Torah uses metaphors. That's what I'm trying to say.
Even
Uh,
that it says, write this on your heart and your soul. Obviously, that's metaphorical.
Correct. For example,
Have
yes.
to judge. But I find it interesting that that hasn't been preserved by your community. So that's interesting, historically.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about the slaughter? Do you guys believe in the kosher slaughter? Because that's not in the Torah. Like, do you need to slaughter your animals a certain way, or you just kill them?
We do have a certain way, but that only comes because the priests told us so. They have the wisdom. Again, like we said, ask your father and he will tell you. And then the Torah does mention that there's the animals that you're not allowed to eat, or if it's a dead animal you're not allowed to eat, right? So what's a dead animal? If you find a sheep that is just dead on the street, can you eat it? No. Why? Because it's not slaughtered. Then what is a slaughtering, right? So you go to the high priest or the priests and they will confirm for you.
Slaughtered, it's because it's a corpse. We're told not to eat corpse.
Correct.
That's
Correct. But this also implies that it has to be slaughtered.
to be killed with
So
food, in the simplest.
correct.
Um, okay, and yeah, so that's some of the things I wanted to ask you. And
And by the way, if someone is wondering, like, what is the slaughtering, what is the kosher slaughtering for us, it's the same way as the Jewish way of slaughtering the animal. The only difference is that the prayers of the, like what you read is different, and the direction of the slaughtering is towards Mount Gerizim. So
mm, mhm. Yeah, interesting. Well, I mean, what about the kid and its mother's milk? That's a big controversy.
that's a big one. Yeah, I mean, we have the same belief actually as Jewish people when it comes to that. Is that we make a difference between milk and meat. We don't put them on the same table. We don't mix them, of course, with any food. And if we eat meat, we don't drink milk after that for 6 to 7 hours. And
Well,
if we drink milk, milk, we don't eat meat for 3 hours. If we eat meat, 6 hours or something like that.
I'm seeing a lot of similarities between the tradition,
Yeah, yeah,
between
there
the
is.
synagogue, the chazanim, the holidays, the prayers, a lot of the
There is.
to be very similar. I think it's more uh, again, obviously this temple controversy, which is not 100% relevant these days, although you guys
Hmm.
actually live there, so you can go, slaughter the Passover offering, which is interesting.
Yeah.
You don't see it as a hindrance, meaning you don't see the fact that you don't have a tabernacle. You still, as long as you're at the place, you can slaughter the Passover offering, we believe.
As long as you're on Mount Gerizim, you can slaughter the Passover ceremony, and there's different reasons why we have that as a belief. First of all, we believe that the Passover commandment came before. I mean, we don't believe that in the Torah. It is seen that it came before even the Mishkan was mentioned, right? That's one thing. And the second thing is the verse that commands this, clearly mentions that kol kal Israel, like all the community of Israel shall do it, which means not only the Levim, not only the Levites, but also the non-Levites shall do it,
Mhm.
which means you don't need a Mishkan because only the Levites were allowed in the Mishkan.
It doesn't say that the
So,
Levites have to slaughter it. It just says
correct.
you should bring their animals to the Temple Mount. Well, I mean, that must be awesome. How was that experience eating the Passover sacrifice?
It's incredible. Yeah, it's like words are hard to describe the experience very clearly. It's a mystical experience in my opinion, and I say mystical is because it just feels very today in the modern world. It's just hard to imagine how was the ancient world. You have movies to give you like the experience a little bit, but I say ancient because it is an ancient ritual, and there's chanting all the time. There's like 6 7 hours of chantings, and also it's sometimes it's a lone chanting, like three people between like each other, like in different groups, and sometimes all the community, all the 600 500 males and even females join in this chanting. And when there's like many people chanting the same chant, it's such a powerful thing. And of course, eating the meat and cooking it and eating it, like how the Torah commands, with sticks in your hands and sandals in your feet, and you shall eat it fast. All those things, all those little details is like is like basically kind of like a painting unfolding in front of you, like a painting or like a play or anything. Just literally unfolding it piece by piece, and all that to remember the story, because then when your son or the next generation sees all this, it just has to spark curiosity, and you tell them the story. So
Yeah. Do you fast on Yom Kippur?
we do
Yeah.
24 hours.
Mm.
There's
And
also a 25-hour prayer,
okay. And do you keep the days from evening to evening or morning to morning?
evening to evening. So the new day, like the day is a new day when the sun sets. So
Oh, oh. Yeah. So again, it's funny because between all the prayers, the 24-hour prayers, that the Jews do that too.
yeah.
I imagine you have your own prayers. Do you have
Yes, we have our own set of prayer books and our own set of chants and melodies, and
Totally
Yes,
different,
of course.
totally different than the Jewish
They
prayer
are
book.
totally different in many ways. I mean, of course, when it comes to Torah, we have the same verses, but then again, it's in ancient Hebrew. The tradition of how to read them, the Nikud might be different, you know. So,
Mhm.
and of course, the pronunciation. We have different pronunciations. Like, for example, we don't have cha, we don't have che in ancient Hebrew. So, if I want to say chodesh, which means month, I can say adesh. Adesh azze lakim, ha chodesh hazze lachem. Adesh azze lakim in Samaritan Hebrew.
Interesting. And do you have like the Amidah prayer and stuff like that that the Jewish people have?
Amidah prayer, prayer with your when you're standing, or
Stand up and they read like I don't know, it's like 17 blessings. It's like the hallmark of Jewish prayer. They do it like three times. Do you do three times a day prayer?
we do have one morning and evening only, actually,
Mm.
but
They
it's
don't
not.
have
We don't call it Amidah.
different prayer book.
It's a different prayer book, completely different prayer book. Yes.
Oh,
It
well,
starts with reading the parasha, the Bereshit, you know, like the creation, and then transfers to reading what we call the Ketef, which is basically the different parts of the Torah, the important parts like the mentioned Isaac, Jacob, and then there's also the Shema. Every single prayer we have the Shema for sure, and then we have three bow downs on the ground. You know, like
mm.
basically bowing down, touching our heads to the ground. Three particular
Okay, every prayer.
towards Mount Gerizim. Every single prayer, yes.
Mm.
But every day it can be a different kinds of bow downs in what we say. So I mean, what we read. So if Sunday you have read those particular bow downs, Monday you know.
Well, it's definitely interesting to see the many different groups of, I wouldn't say Jews because you're not Jews, but
I mean, we are and we aren't.
Israelites, you know.
Yes.
And I think that that term needs to make a comeback because Jew
Yeah.
refers to a very narrow part of the people. I mean, it's not even a biblical word, Jew. So it is, you know, the children of Israel refers to the nation in its entirety. And the attempt to call the Jews Jews is a way to limit the Jewish people to just the tribe of Judah and the
Mm.
kingdom of Judea. But if we're looking at the totality of the people, Israel is a much more accurate.
I agree with you on the fact that people today stopped using the word Israelites. Like they say, like if you say Jewish, it just means automatically that they are, Torah believers. Where while in reality, it clearly, it comes from, the tribe of Judah or the kingdom of Judah. So
Well, I have to tell you, as a fellow Torah believer, it's very encouraging to hear that the Torah is intact, no matter where you look, whether it's in the Christians, the Jews, the Samaritans. We're seeing a consistent Torah. And for the most part, obviously, there's these differences, and
yes,
may God enlighten us down the road as to how to resolve these issues. But the Torah itself is out there, and anyone can read it. It's the five books of Moses. It's very clear, and it's a wonderful.
like the Torah says. In ancient Hebrew, we say. כי המסע הזאת אשר נקי אמסבק היום, כי המצווה אשר אני יכול אמסבך היום, לא נפלט היא ממך, ולא רחוקה היא, ולא רחוקה היא ממך, ולא בשמיים, and it's not in the sky, and it's not in the seas, for you to say, who will go to the seas, but it's in your heart and it's in your mouth, and
Exactly.
it can be true, so.
Only chapter 30. No, I mean it's wonderful. We have a great history, and the Torah is the foundation of all that. And I think the tradition is interesting. I think for all the different communities, there's a lot to learn from the traditions. But if we can all acknowledge the Torah as our common ground, then we can get to the point where we are united enough to even consider rebuilding the tabernacle. So that'll be good.
Yep.
All right, Abood, God bless. Have a good.
Thank you, God bless. You too, it was great to talk to you, and see you in the next times, hopefully.
All right, nice talking to you as well. All
Thank
the
you, my friend. Bye
best.
bye.